Hello there. Welcome to my campfire. My name is Seraphine, the Midnight Bard, and it is my job to travel from place to place, seeking the strange, the bizarre, and the unexplained. When I find such things, I write them down in the Midnight Book, where the evil becomes trapped within its pages forever. But what happens when evil is not so easily defined? When dark forces prey on innocent men, they are evil indeed. But what if the man these forces target is wicked in nature? Are their deeds still evil? Or are their actions justified? Perhaps the following story holds the answer to our query. Listen closely, and perhaps you might avoid a chance meeting with a mountain stranger. Jordan Burnside was loving life, master of his own universe. His day started off with a bonus morning romp before leaving the hotel. He even managed to get his money back, sneaking away after their go-round before she got out of the shower. He'd paid extra for the extra treatment. Freebie. What could she do? Call a cop? His appointment, a client he'd been romancing for 6 months, committed to a large order. Jordan's commission from that little peach didn't compare to what he'd skim off the top. Still, he'd left his morning meeting feeling fine. Ahead of schedule, he'd left the highway not far from the Virginia-North Carolina state line with the thought he'd find a good barbecue place for lunch. Waiting for his food, he called Sarah to tell her the good news. Of all people, you'd think the wife might appreciate his business accomplishment. No. All she wanted to talk about was her friend leaving her husband and taking the children. Who gives a fuck? Happens every day. Jordan wondered idly what the poor bastard would have to pay out. Better him than me, Jordan thought. Paying his check, he skipped out on the tip, electing instead to leave a note for the waitress to move faster if she expected to receive anything extra. The food hadn't been all that great anyway. Barbecue in the South was supposed to be the best, but he was unimpressed. He'd eaten better in Buffalo, New York. Yankees could teach these hicks a thing or two about the proper way to smoke a brisket. Still, the countryside was nice enough. Late summer trees, green, lush, crowded right up to the roadside, often forming living tunnels with their interlocking branches. The forest floor, dappled in sunlight determined enough to penetrate the canopy above, was buried underneath a thick layer of summers past, now crisp, brown, dead as former glory. Jordan decided to remain on the byways, making his way north toward Roanoke. This detour might add a few hours to his overall trip, but what the hell? His next appointment was a small doctor's office in Roanoke 2 days from now. Even meandering on the secondary roads, he'd be in town with plenty of time to spare. Smythe County became Wythe County, and Jordan began to wonder what Southern Virginia had against normal English. Crossing over Summit Valley County line from Wythe, Jordan found 2 things of interest aside from the mountainous scenery. The first, a blues station, WBAD radio. Second, a redhead. He'd stopped in a nowhere mountain piss hole called Summit Valley. Typical of small towns, Summit Valley was comprised of a factory, a couple of gas stations, a few traffic lights, and a McDonald's. She walked by, smiling. Jordan figured she liked the car. A sleek Lexus LC with a custom retractable hardtop. The car got attention. It gave him the right look. Stylish, successful, big dick energy. Nothing like the typical Ford or Chevy truck common around here. She was good looking, too. Surprising for a place like this. wavy red hair blazing in the afternoon sunshine, snug t-shirt tucked into tight jeans. Passing him by, she continued her stroll towards downtown Main Street. Jordan wondered who she was going home to. He wondered if her hair was as soft as it appeared. Suddenly uncomfortable standing in a public parking lot with an extremely visible public hard-on, Jordan kept himself close to the Lexus. Taking another moment to watch her walk, Jordan sighed, hung up the gas pump, took his receipt, and drove away from the stunning redhead. The back roads were confusing. Jordan soon found himself pulling into downtown Summit Valley, the opposite way he'd intended to go. "How the hell did I end up back here?" Jordan wondered aloud. After making a left onto Route 11, he had no idea how he'd turned off it in the first place, Jordan passed a sign which read, "Thanks for visiting historic downtown Summit Valley." Driving toward the gas station where he recently filled up, he saw the redhead on her way towards visiting historic downtown Summit Valley. What a beauty! Twice more, he tried the same route, only to find himself back in Summit Valley, the redhead a little further down each time he passed by. "I've found the inescapable town," Jordan thought, his mood beginning to sour. A left onto Main and he was heading north again, back towards the gas station. And the redhead. She stood on the corner waiting for the light, beautiful in her blue jeans. Her hair shone like a flaming corona, framing her face in flames. Recognizing the car, Jordan was sure. He'd passed her enough times. She tipped him a little wave. "Fuck it," he thought, pulling across the intersection to intercept her. "Might as well have a little fun since I'm lost." Rolling down the window, Jordan gave her his most charming smile. "Hey, I wonder if you can help me. I seem to have gotten turned around." She walked up to his window, keeping herself out of arm's length without appearing rude.
"Uh-huh. Finally got up the nerve to stop and talk? Where are you trying to go?"
"Roanoke. I was hoping to take Route 11 to 460 instead of the highway. I keep getting turned around. I promise I'm not stalking you, I'm just lost."
"A scenic route?"
She smiled at his whimsy, her full red lips gorgeous, inviting.
"Exactly."
"Why aren't you taking your girlfriend? Or wife? Why alone?"
"Oh, I work too much to have a wife or girlfriend."
The lie came smooth to his tongue, sliding out automatically.
"I'm in pharmaceutical sales. I travel a lot."
"Really?"
Her green eyes narrowed.
"Honest."
Jordan held up his left hand.
"See? No ring. No tan line either. I'm a salesman, but that doesn't make me a scoundrel."
Jordan never wore a wedding ring, although he insisted Sarah wear one. Traffic was non-existent. Jordan checked his mirrors for safety, relaxing a bit more as the street was empty except for the two of them.
"You're a scoundrel, I'm sure,"
she said with a smile, leaning over a little further, bracing a hand on the door. Jordan hid his irritation at her touching the car, concentrating instead on the curve of her shirt. She knew what he was looking at. Women loved a man who knows what he's about.
"Nah, I promise I'm a nice guy. Completely harmless. Tell me where I'm going wrong and I'll leave you alone."
Jordan flashed his most disarming grin, what he thought of as his most seductive.
"Tell you what,"
she said.
"I'll jump in and show you where you're going wrong."
"I'm headed to Roanoke."
"That's okay. I have friends who'll give me a ride back. Not a problem. You're doing both of us a favor."
"Well, if you want to ride, hop in and we'll get out of here."
On the radio, the DJ said,
"That was Warning Blues by Otis Grand. Now it's time for someone else who got caught somewhere they shouldn't. It's the Robert Johnson classic, Hellhound on My Trail. I'm howlin' mad right here on WBAD Bad Radio."
"I wouldn't have picked you for a blues man,"
she said, nodding at the radio.
What would you have picked me for?
Something crass, offensive, hard rock, gangster rap, something testosterone-filled. This is almost sensitive.
Hey, I'm a sensitive guy. Buckle up.
There's a slight turnoff here to the right. See it? Otherwise you loop back into town.
Jordan guided the Lexus to the on-ramp which he completely missed 3 times previously. He was sure it wasn't there. Jordan was sure the ramp wasn't there. Anyway, he was northbound again with a gorgeous redhead beside him.
What's your name?
Jordan asked.
Shirley?
Nice to meet you, Shirley. I'm Jordan.
He held out his hand for her to shake. Her skin was cool and dry where she gripped his forefinger, like she was reluctant to touch him.
She said.
A hunger pang hit Jordan, and he was surprised to see it was nearing 5 o'clock. His trip circling Summit Valley took more time than he thought. Had he really lost 3.5, almost 4 hours circling town? It seemed impossible, much like the vanishing on-ramp. This was turning into a damn strange day. Shaking off the awkward handshake, Jordan settled back into the plush leather of the driver's seat. The engine purred, and Jordan was content to enjoy the scenery with a beautiful, if distant, Shirley beside him. He didn't doubt he'd soon warm her up. Night came early. Mountains threw deep shadows which brought darkness early. Trees growing close to the road intertwined their branches to blot out the sky. Sensing the growing dark, the Lexus automatically switched on its headlights. Electric light bounced off the reflective double yellow lines, giving Jordan the impression of following a trail of fire.
Interesting feature,
Shirley commented on the headlights coming on. It was the first she'd spoken in half an hour.
Yeah, the dash lighting automatically dims as well,
Jordan said, hoping to encourage conversation. Her sitting there, fine as she was, in complete silence was beginning to be a bit creepy. Jordan started to regret not sticking to the highway. If he had, he'd be in Roanoke at the hotel having cocktails right now. As it was, he was driving through mountains with a near silent passenger, and it was too damn dark to see the surrounding countryside. His entire point in taking this backroad excursion was to enjoy the countryside. Shirley didn't bite. Jordan returned his concentration to the road. The dark made looking ahead impossible. Even slowed to 40 miles an hour, Jordan still outdrove his headlamps. The road was curvy, full of tight switchbacks, which put the Lexus sport suspension to the test. In daylight, this drive, unfamiliar as it was, might be fun. At night, he needed all his concentration to stay in his lane. This was the worst, most exhausting type of driving. The only way to make this worse would be for an ice storm to roll in, making the twisting road that much more treacherous and unpredictable. A hand on his thigh almost caused him to drive off the road.
We should talk,
Shirley said, leaning toward him, her hand on his knee. Jordan began looking for a place to pull over. There wasn't so much as a wide spot anywhere. A deep ditch and a steep hillside on the right, a drop off to a rushing creek on the left. Nowhere to pull over.
It's fine,
Shirley said.
Keep driving. You aren't a nice man, are you, Mr. Burnside?
What do you mean?
Jordan asked, thinking it was a game. Foreplay. The radio clicked on.
She's gonna break down your greatest hits, my man.
And clicked off again. Jordan looked from the road to the radio to Shirley, unsure of what to focus on. His skin was crawling. His growing erection wilted. Shirley leaned back and began counting on her fingers, raising one when she made a new point.
I mean, you aren't a nice man. You hired a prostitute this morning, robbed her, and cheated on your wife in the process. You're a womanizer. You embezzle from your work, You buy substandard pills and sell them as premium, pocketing the difference. Who cares if they are poisoning people? You're cheap to boot. A cheap, thieving, philandering, whoremongering, lying sodomite. And that's just today. I don't like you. I don't enjoy the company of men like you. My first husband was like you. A misogynist and a bully. Abusive. I tied him to his favorite easy chair and set him on fire.
Jordan tried to respond, to defend himself, but her disgust was palpable, an overwhelming pressure in his skull. His mouth gaped open and closed, incapable of forming an articulate defense. Jordan felt like a worm squirming in front of a cat. Escape was impossible, and she might pounce at any moment. He was defenseless to stop her.
All evening, you've thought of nothing but how to get my clothes off.
No, it isn't.
Don't bother denying it. You insult me and embarrass yourself. And Mr. Burnside, I'm not someone you want to insult.
Jordan brought the car to a complete stop. The creek no longer ran beside the road, having turned away on its own course. Maple, birch, and oak stood vigil away from the road, away from her. How did she know the things she did? It was impossible for her to know. The menace coming from her, the malice, assaulted him in black, crushing waves.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry,
Jordan stammered.
I'm getting out of the car now, Mr. Burnside, and you're going to resume driving. You will continue driving up this mountain alone, in the dark, knowing neither rest, nor comfort, nor peace for the rest of eternity. You cannot stop. You cannot escape. You belong to me now, Mr. Burnside. Should you stop, the creatures in these woods will tear you apart and you will wake again behind the wheel of this vehicle you're so proud of. I'd wish you a good day, but you've seen the last sunlight you'll ever know.
Shirley opened the door, and Jordan watched her swish away into the woods, disappearing into the shadow. Jordan sat for a moment, trying to control his shaking hands. His heart pounded in his chest. The radio clicked on, and his car was filled with the voice of Howling Mad, voice of WBAD radio.
Better get a move on, Big Daddy. We've got your scent.
Motion in the woods drew his attention. Jordan squinted, trying to get a better look. Something hit the rear quarter panel on his side hard enough to rock the suspension. Growling all around him, growing in intensity. Shirley left the door open. Whatever was out there, strong enough to shake the car, had an unobstructed path inside. Jordan leapt to close it, jerking the door closed as something hit the outside, slamming the armrest painfully into the top of his head. For a moment, nothing existed except the blinding pain between his ears.
I'd worry less about the door and more about getting moving. You heard the lady,
Howling Mad informed him. Jordan was out of options. As implausible as it seemed, he was stuck, driving up a never-ending mountain in the dark. Nothing worked. Nothing left, except submission. First, he tried simply turning around, going back the way he came. The road dipped, then resumed climbing as he rounded the corner. He'd crashed the car, twice. Once into a tree, the other time into the creek. Both times, he'd met the denizens of the woods. Large, skinless, bare things, before waking up back here behind the wheel. The second time, They took longer. He tried to drive through the woods toward a porch light. They caught him, tearing the car apart to get to him. The third time was even worse. If he kept between the lines and above 30 miles an hour, he was all right. If he fell asleep, the car slowed, and they'd bash their bloody, slobbering faces into the side panels or windows, drag him out and suck the marrow from his thigh bones. Sometimes, the car ran out of gas. Worse, they knew exactly where the Lexus would come to a stop. Jordan dreaded seeing their bloody semicircle in the road, waiting for the car to halt, all its momentum spent. Waiting for him. Jordan didn't like to think about it. When the needle indicated less than 1/8 remaining, he began to sweat, knowing what waited ahead. Occasionally, Howling Mad updated him about his wife. She'd declared him legally dead in order to annul the marriage. No one missed him. No one was looking for him. No one mourned his disappearance. Sarah found another man, was having his baby, the same man she'd spent her time with when he was away on business. She never thought about him. Jordan listened to these infrequent updates on his former life, clinging to them as his headlights cut the never-ending night on his endless drive to nowhere. No hope, no love, nothing left except submission and pain. Jordan Burnside, former salesman, mind broken, began to laugh. On the radio, Howling Mad laughed with him.